Let's start the actual show. So once again, welcome everybody to episode 11 of the Paul and Pals podcast. I'm your host, Ponyboy Paul. And Paul and Pals is a show where I interview my creative pals to learn how they became who they are today to inspire you for tomorrow. And on episode 11, I'll be interviewing my pal, Scott Trench. Just quick, I'm gonna let him talk more about himself, but just quick little intro. He's currently the CEO slash president of BiggerPockets, a real estate investing platform dedicated to educating you guys on how to, invest in real estate. So, but I want him to tell his story. So, in the meantime, please drop your pony emojis, and I'm bringing him in the show.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how you doing, Scott?
I am doing great. Thanks for inviting me to be here.
No problem, man. No problem. How you living, bro? How you living?
I'm living pretty well, I think. Life is good. Excited,
That's good.
it's always fun. Lots of big changes. Coronavirus seems to be it's horrible. 2020 has been horrible. But let's making the most of it,
Yeah, I'm trying, man. So yeah, let's start there. How has COVID been treating you? How have you living? How's life been different?
Yeah, well, I would, when it first hit, I think I panicked and bought 1 million groceries and all that kind of stuff. So probably among
Okay.
the worst of
Were
those.
you, were you one of the
But
people that bought the toilet paper?
I didn't buy a lot of
You
toilet paper, but I
you
bought
can
a lot of
admit to
canned
it.
food. Yeah. um,
Okay,
No,
that's good.
and then I promptly gained the COVID-19. Then I finally bought some gym equipment and lost it, and actually got in pretty good shape. So kind of like a big pendulum effect there for me
Okay,
with COVID. So
I feel like I'm the opposite. Like I was so motivated to start working out, and I was going at it, and then to hit like I don't know 4 or 5 months into COVID, I'm just like, dang, like I just went back to like regular. So it has been a very interesting time. But the show is not about COVID; it's about yourself, Mr. Scott Trench. And before I let you tell us your story, I want to talk about how we met or how we know each other.
Mhm.
So I've actually known about you since my senior year of college at the University of Michigan, and it was my last semester where I had like just one extra semester, so I graduated in winter. And a friend had referred me to Choose FI, which is another podcast dedicated to financial independence. They had interviewed you, and I really liked your story. And I remember I bought your book like that day. So this is 2017, and
Sounds
it
like I owe you a beer.
yeah, you definitely do. And that book had such an impact on my life in terms of just getting my mind right about financial education, financial independence, because that was my first time learning about that stuff. So once I saw that, I read it, I just became a fan of Bigger Pockets of you, and I just kind of kept on the lookout. But how I actually got you on the show today is a friend of mine. Shout out Josh and Zoe. I think he's actually in the chat. I was looking on your LinkedIn one day and I saw him as a mutual, and I'm like, yo, like, do you know him? Like, I would love to interview him. And he texted you that day, and that's how we got here. So I really appreciate you for coming on. Appreciate you for being so willing. But where do you want to start your story? Do you want to start just when you were growing up? Like, where are you from? Let's start right there.
Yeah, sure. And shout out to Josh. We had a great catch up. I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. And he's a very successful entrepreneur. It sounds like with
Yeah.
up to some really cool things. I think he's
Hmm.
on. Um, so I grew up in a suburb between Baltimore and Washington D.C. Kind of like upper middle class household, I'd say. Sports were kind of like the defining thing for me as a kid. So I don't know how interesting or helpful my background will be as a kid, but feel free to dive in as much as you'd like there
Okay.
about that. But maybe the story for me really gets started in late college and right after graduation, I would
And where'd you
say.
go to? And where'd you go to college?
I went to Vanderbilt University, so I was captain of the rugby club and very active in a fraternity. So you can tell where my priorities were uh,
It's
in
college.
college there.
Got you. Okay, cool. So let's start late college. Give us a scenario. Give us the setting. How's everything going for you?
Yeah, so college. I started out. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to major in or anything like that. I was probably kind of torn between a. I started with an engineering, exploring engineering. I explored pre med. I explored a bunch of different other things, and you know, I took a couple of internships. One of the internships that was pivotal for me was I got a really prestigious internship doing cancer research at Johns Hopkins University between sophomore and junior year of college. That's a really good setup for a medical degree, right? If you
Hmm.
want to go to med school.
Yeah.
And I hated it. I was like, I really wanted to like be part of the cure to cancer, but I found that it was really tedious. There's like you test a drug on some cells or whatever, and you change the protein secretion of 180,000. It's like very difficult to make progress on there, although it's good work. And so I
Yes.
immediately kind of changed course from there and became a finance I ended up majoring in economics and history and
Mm,
minoring in finance and corporate strategy. And from there, I got a degree, or I went into the world of corporate finance following.
gotcha. Okay, cool. So it looks like a lot of people have kind of had the same similar where they tried something, they hated it, and they just had this big pivot, right?
Mhm.
So when you dived into that corporate finance world, was it like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life? Or was it more like, I got to graduate. This is okay. I don't hate it. Let me just go with it.
Well, actually, I got a job. I got an internship at a Dish Network uh, between my junior and senior year of college, and they offered me a job in finance after that. So my job was something around like marketing collateral and like Radio Shack. And I think
Okay.
my suggestion to them after managing that was, you probably should stop sending items or trying to market it all at Radio Shack because no one goes there. So
Yeah.
my boss who in marketing at the time, I don't think was super thrilled with that. I don't think she gave, maybe I don't know how much attention I was being paid, but when I got up and presented to the finance team at the end of at the end of the summer, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
you should probably cut my boss's budget, just not do this anymore. I did not get an offer to work
Oh,
full
okay.
time from the marketing department. I got an offer from the finance
I
department.
see. You were
So I
blacklisted.
went into finance at Dish, and within a couple of months, before I did that, I graduated and I blew all the remaining savings I had on a trip to Europe with a couple of buddies.
Hey.
Uh, and that was a blast. I had a great time. I spent like probably 4 or 5 weeks in Europe, backpacking
Nice.
around and
Yeah.
staying in hostels, exhausted, but had a lot of fun. Anyways, so I start my career in late 2013 at Dish Network, and within a couple of months, there's a couple of things that spurred me to discover, I guess, for myself this concept of financial independence. I
Mhm.
became Within 3 months, I think I kind of discovered, hey, I'm going to be here for 30 years if I follow the track of the corporate ladder. I'm going to move from this cubicle to that cubicle with the higher walls to that one with the big walls to that office and then to
Mm.
finally to the corner office if I do it really, really well. So if I'm the best, I could be CFO at this company over a 25-year period. And that was not very appealing to me from a career trajectory standpoint. I also became demotivated after getting a lot of praise for performance, but maybe not getting the raise I had hoped for,
Mm.
or kind of that I thought would correlate with that. And so I started studying. I was like, how do I become a better financial analyst so I can figure this out at a better clip? And instead of discovering that, in the process of searching for that, I discovered the concept of personal finance generally. And I
Mm.
couldn't tell you what initial thing sparked the rabbit hole, but what definitely got me going was this, or what I definitely remember it being very powerful was this blog called Mr. Money Mustache.
Yep.
So I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that, but that's was probably the Kickstarter to my journey. This guy is a really a zealot about personal finance and frugality. It's about achieving financial freedom through badassity. So
Mhm.
he talks about how do you get your lifestyle expenses down to like 30, $25,000 a year and just invest and plow the rest into investments, right?
Mhm.
And so I became infatuated with that and started saving as much as I possibly could, probably at the end of 2013, about 4, 5, 6 months into starting my job. The other thing that really was exciting for me was I discovered BiggerPockets at the same time. So one of the things that a lot of the FI community or these bloggers on personal finance preach is index fund investing. Well, for
Okay.
me, that was a little slow. I said, okay, great. If I save really hard and become very, very frugal, I'm going to be able to reach financial independence within a 10, 20 year period. Well, I was like, I don't want to be here for 10 years doing this.
You really
I want to
hated
be,
that
I want
job,
to
huh?
be, yeah, financially free much sooner than that. Right. And
Yeah.
so then it became a mathematical game for me. And I was like, okay, great. To be financially free, it's an equation. It's how much passive income can I create and how much is my lifestyle expense cost. Right. And I had read The 4 Hour Work Week, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Mr. Money Mustache, and I discovered Bigger Pockets. And real estate became a really powerful lever for me in my mind because my biggest expense was housing, right? That was like a third of my overall housing expense. And if I could eliminate that or produce passive income or do at the same time, that was a really powerful concept. So BiggerPockets introduced me to this concept called house hacking, where you buy an investment property, live in one part of it, rent out the other parts, and the rental income covers your mortgage expense. And for me, that was the light bulb moment. I was like, boom, if I can do that, wow, my expenses are going to go from $2,000, $3,000 a month to like $1,000 a month. And that's
Mhm.
even with me blowing a lot of money on Natty Light at the time, and
The good
weekends
old
out,
frat boy
right?
drink,
And,
yeah.
and so, that's even with me spending a lot of money having fun. I can't spend if I house hack, live for free, and bike to work. There's just no possible way to do it. So that was
Mhm.
financial freedom to me. And so I did it. That's what I did. At the end of over the course of 2014, I made two big changes in my life. One, I bought a duplex and house hacked it, and the other was I joined BiggerPockets as
Got
an employee. So I joined the startup.
And I wanna break that down too, 'cause, you said that was 2014. How old are you right now?
I'm 30 now. I just turned 30 in September 1st,
Oh.
2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
really? Nice.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
September 8th. Shout out September people.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask, 'cause, you mentioned it, it stuck out to me. So you said the moment you joined that job, you were like, "Oh, I don't wanna be here for 30 years. I gotta figure this stuff out," right? So I'm curious, when you were going through college or maybe like prior to or maybe when you first had your first serious internship, was this whole financial concept not on your mind at all? Or was it more like you were just already bought into that I'm just gonna work for 30 years and do it? Like what made you like what exactly was it about that first job that were like, "Oh, I gotta figure something else out?"
I would say I thought, I guess when it wasn't at the first moment, of course, but it was
Mhm.
probably within a couple of months after the job. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's like I didn't want to be controlled. Maybe it was I didn't feel like why does this person she was very nice, my manager, but why does this person have control to this level over my life? Why is that the deal here? Why am I not in control? How do I put myself in a position where I'm the one dictating the terms of my life in
Mhm.
every capacity, right? So it was probably a combination of all of those things. So
Okay, got you. Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I think everybody kinda I went through the same thing where I'm like, I knew what a work was, I had interned before, I kinda knew what everybody was doing, but I don't know what it is about actually starting full time, like, those days you start to realize, like, "Dang, this is a
mhm.
long time," so it's good that, everybody can relate to that. And then I also wanna get to the point I wanna break down house hacking, but before that, you mentioned BiggerPockets, which you are currently the CEO slash president of. But at
Mhm.
that time, 2014, it already existed, right?
Yep.
So you kind of break down what BiggerPockets is and like maybe the history of it.
Sure. So BiggerPockets is a real estate investing educational website and networking community, right? So what the premise is, real estate investing is risky, and it's also a really powerful way to build wealth, right? That's accessible to anybody who can save up for a home payment can also buy rental property or invest, right? I just talked about house hacking.
Hmm.
So it's a powerful tool for America's middle and maybe upper middle class to invest in and build wealth and achieve financial freedom. But the entry point, the price of entry into real estate investing is maybe a several hundred hours long self educational grind. I
Oh
don't know,
yeah,
right? And
a
it's and
lot of
it's
work.
it's a self study, right? And so what Bigger Pockets provides is you can listen to our podcasts or read books or browse our forums or attend networking events in your local community or read blog posts or watch videos, whatever format is best for you. Just consuming content and hearing the stories of other investors, how they succeeded, what worked for them, what didn't, and over time developing enough mental models and comfort with real estate investing to feel ready to actually buy it for yourself. So that's I think what we do and what really got me going. Why I was a big fan before I ever joined the company as an employee,
Mhm.
um, because that's what I did. I just dove in for several hundred hours listening to real estate investing educational content,
Yeah.
and that kind of prepped me to buy my first house hack, changed my life before I ever joined.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to highlight that for one, two reasons. Is one, I want to thank you once again. You're going to be actually giving that a bigger pockets pro 1 year pro membership. So I would appreciate you for doing that because I think it's a very
Oh yeah.
beneficial resource for anybody that's interested in real estate or just really wants to dive in but they don't know where to start. I would also recommend bigger pockets, and I think it's also because I think the idea of bigger pockets is a very I don't know, almost very altruistic in that when you think about any person that has wealth, any person that's we see as successful or they're living at a how we want to live, I feel like real estate is almost a part of everybody's portfolio. So like, I feel like if you don't have that, you're kind of behind. So I think Bigger Pots is doing a great job of trying to bring in as much people as they can. So I really think that was really dope. So speaking about them, how did you actually get involved and start working there?
Yeah, so I started listening to the podcast and learning about real estate investing, join the community, those types of things. And one of the pieces of advice that we gave out at the time and still give out is go network with local real estate investors and meet up with them. So I joined a mastermind group that I had no business joining at the time. I was like 24, and these guys were all serial entrepreneurs in real estate, own multiple properties, or whatever. But they let me tag along, and I'm very grateful for that. And I had a blast. I learned. I showed up every Thursday at 7 o'clock in the morning to this guy's house, and we talked business, and I learned and took them all out to lunch and met them one by one. In the process of meeting one of these guys, they worked at a co-working space. At that same co-working space was Josh Dorkin, founder of Bigger Pockets. So I banged on his door, introduced myself. He told me to go away a few times. And then finally, I was able to kind of invite him out for lunch. He declined, but he invited me to come in for an interview to interview as his director of operations. And when you're director of operations at a 3-person firm, that means you just do all of the crap that the founder doesn't want to do. So that was how I joined Bigger Pockets as a third employee there back in
Oh
2014.
wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy. So there's only two of them, just him,
just
and,
him and Brandon. Yep.
okay, wow,
There
that's
were other
crazy.
people. There are other people who have been associated with the business longer than me in the form of contract, as contractors.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but maybe fifth or sixth person to
Gotcha.
be still here with associated with Bigger Pockets. That wasn't.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's really dope. And then was that? I mean, obviously you kind of said he kind of said no, and then he finally said yes. Was that just more of a persistence thing? Like, how would you recommend going about that? 'Cause that seemed like a lot of confidence to do that.
Well, I wasn't looking for a job at the time necessarily. I was there saying, "Oh my gosh, this guy changed my life. I'm going to be investing in real estate regardless." I think I offered to work for free for him. I said, "Dude,
Wow.
can I like moderate your forums or something that would be helpful to you?" And I couldn't even see at the time what opportunity that would present itself, but I just knew Bigger Pockets was a special business and brand that I wanted to be a part of. And I figured there would be opportunities to network or meet people that came with that. So that turned into a job offer, that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, that's dope. Okay, so now that we kind of broken down the Bigger Pockets, I kind of want to touch on the other raffle prize you'll be giving away: a copy of your best-selling book, Set for Life, which, like I said before, changed my life heavily. So, what was that? Kind of like happening throughout all this, or what made you even want to write a book, and what made you feel like you could write the book?
Yeah, so the book, I think that there's a lot of wealth building books out there that are, kind of like Money 101 or really mindset driven. Here's the mindset of becoming wealthy and those types of things. But I thought, hey, there's like none of this is practical. None of this is a step-by-step guide on actually improving my position. And so I was like, what is the problem? The problem is a median $50,000 a year household income earning American with an average expense profile. How does that person become wealthy in a reasonable period of time? And I was like, that was my goal. That was where I started. I started making $48,000 a year. Now, that's a pretty solid salary for someone just out of college as an individual, but it's a median income. And like I said, what is the step-by-step approach to doing that? And so my approach was this. The first thing is save up a year of expenses, right? And what does a year of expenses do? It gives you breathing room. Financial runway is what I call it. It's a year of flexibility. With a year of expenses, 25, for me, that was $25,000. Oh, by the way, a year of expenses, saving up a year of expenses is a combination of two things. It's how much your expenses are. The lower you have your expenses, the more
Yep,
you save, and the less cash you need to sustain a year of
living.
spending, right? Your
Okay.
spending. So um, savings is the first part of that. I just ground down my savings. And I think that's the way to start for the average middle class American earning $50,000 a year with little to no wealth. Because what are they going to do? They're already probably optimized on the income front. You're probably already earning the most salary that you can at your current job. If you weren't, you might go look for another job if your goal is to achieve financial freedom. But
Mm,
it's like most people, I think, are moderately close to being maxed out on the income front.
yeah.
On the investing front, if you're starting with zero, by definition, you have nothing to invest. So how are you going to invest or generate return? Even if you generate great returns, if you're
Yeah.
generating great returns on $1, it's not meaningful. If you're generating great returns on $10,000, it's not meaningful. Generating great returns begins to matter, I think, when you cross that $100,000 net worth mark or $1 million net worth mark.
Yeah.
That's when focusing on investing is probably more powerful than earning more income, right? And
Mm,
so the first step is saving up $25,000 or a year of runway. Once you get to that point, you have breathing room. Your boss no longer has day to day power over you. You could take another job that pays less or it has bigger upside. You can make an investment. You can buy a home, right? All those options become available to you. The way I parlayed that first year of runway after my first year of savings was I bought a house hack. And because I had a high savings rate, I was able to take a chance on this startup for lower pay, but more
mm,
opportunity downstream, right? That's one way to do it. I think that that's a viable framework that other people can repeat. Although not everybody can join a 3-person startup that 25 goes 25 fold in 6 years, right?
yeah.
So obviously there's like, but that's a spectrum there, and I got very lucky with that choice.
Uh-huh.
But I think that that's a powerful opportunity. Okay, so great. Once you get to the first year of runway, or 25, 30, $40,000, whatever that year of runway is for you, the next step is getting to that six-figure mark, in my opinion. I think it's a good milestone. So how do you do that? Well, you can save your way there, but that's pretty slow and inefficient. You need to layer in investing and something that can drive that forward, something on the income generation front.
Yeah.
I like jobs that have sizable income upside. So, what's a job with sizable income upside? Well, becoming a real estate agent is an example of one, right? You can't become a real estate agent if you have no savings and you spend $3,000 a month. You can try your hand at real estate, being a real estate agent, if you have $25,000 in savings, and that's going to last you 10 months, right? That's a reasonable position to try that from. Some You know what your upside is as a financial analyst. $50,000 a year. Next year I'll
Yeah.
make 54. Next year I'll
Your
make
max.
60. But with a scalable career like at a startup or at a sales profession or something that has the potential to really upsize income, or even something that's in your field but has a $40,000 base but 80,000 bonus, right? All these different options become apparent to you with that first year of runway. And so
Mm.
seize one and drive your income forward. Take control of your income, I think, is step two. And then I also love the idea of at least considering house hacking because of its power to reduce your housing expense down to zero and begin driving financial return.
And I have a question before we get into what house hacking really is, and I want you to break that down as well.
Mhm.
You mentioned get that first year of savings, right? And I want you to clarify what that means to you because I think sometimes you might hear savings and you might be like, is that me keeping it in my checking account? Is that me putting in a savings account in bonds, a CD, or is that me investing that 25? Like, what would you say savings is and what would you recommend?
That's a great question. All right, so here's how I'd attack that question. If you're making $50,000 a year and you're spending $25,000 a year, that's 2,000 a month, right? That's how I was living, right? You need less cash, less savings in the bank because your savings rate is so high.
Mm,
Paradoxically, in spite of the fact because you can build so much savings so quickly, you don't need as high of a stockpile. So what I did, which is really aggressive, and I don't know if I'd recommend this to everybody, but I started out and I was like, I'm going to save up $25,000 come hell or high water, and I'm going to keep going after it. And so I stocked away $25,000, but I put it into index funds.
mm,
Mostly. I had like a couple thousand in my bank account, but I put my reserve into index funds, knowing that I could lose half of it if the market
yeah.
tanked. But that was
Okay.
my aggression. I don't know if I'd recommend that. That would be someone else's risk tolerance. But you know who can do that is the guy who's saving at a high rate. You know who can't do that is the person that saves $200 a month on their $80,000 a year salary and has $2,000 in, half a month's expenses in the bank account, right? They can never afford to invest their emergency reserve there.
Gotcha. Okay,
So,
so that's cool. I wanted to go clarify that because I think sometimes like it's different to think about like 25K that you have to just have, and that's what your savings account says versus 25 that kind of builds as you put it in the index funds, and you do have that high risk of the market crashing or you just not being able to access it in the time that you need. So I think
mhm.
just it's nuanced. It's a nuanced decision. So
Yeah, how did I do it at the time? I don't know if I had this framework completely nailed down when I was doing it, but I probably had like 5 or 6,000 in my bank account at any time, and the rest in my after-tax brokerage,
Hmm. Yeah.
in index funds or stocks. So
And I guess you might as well, before we get into house hack, what would you how would you break down what index funds are for the person that may not be fully aware of what that is?
sure. So, an index fund is a composite of the entire real stock market. So instead of trying to pick whether Apple's going to be the next best stock or Amazon or Facebook, you're instead buying the entire index and saying, you know what, I can't pick any returns. I'm just going to get the average of whatever the market produces.
Gotcha. Okay, so like the basically like average in a way. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then let's go back to your story of your first big endeavor in real estate was house hacking. Now, what is house hacking and how can that actually benefit you?
Yeah. So what I did was I said, okay, my biggest expense is rent. How do I eliminate that? So what I did is I bought a duplex in downtown Denver. It was a two bed, one bath, 2 units duplex, dumpy little property. I fixed it up, painted up the cabinets, fixed up some wall holes in the walls, hired a plumber to do a fairly major, for me, it was $3,000 rehab project at the time, basically make it rent ready. And so when that was completed, the other side rented for 1150, and a roommate paid 550. So that's $1,700 in total rent, and my mortgage expense, including principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, was 1550. So to put these all together, I put down $12,000 or 5% using a low down payment owner occupant loan,
Hmm.
bought the duplex, and instead of paying 650 bucks a month in rent and utilities, I began basically living for free. And I probably didn't quite live for free. I was, if you did that math, $1,700 minus 1550 is 150 net. But I also had maintenance and other
Yeah,
expenses
yeah,
that went into it. So I probably didn't quite live for free, but I certainly came out way ahead of my renting situation
exactly.
prior to that. And I still own that duplex today. I bought it for $240,000, and I just got it appraised for $450,000
Wow.
last week, and I'm going to refinance it. So it's been a huge winner, and I believe it will rent. I just remodeled it, which is why I got it reappraised.
Uh-huh.
And I believe it will now rent for $1,800 a piece.
That's crazy. And I think we got to spend a little bit more time on that. I know we have some other stuff to talk about, but I think the concept of house hacking was also one thing that I had never heard about in my life till I read your book. And I think
Mhm.
it's such an amazing plan, right? But do you also feel that it's applicable everywhere? Because for it to work, you need to be able to buy a spot that you can afford, but people also want to live there. You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
think that's the tricky part. And you're willing to live with people. So were you living with strangers? Were you living with people
I
that
was
you
living with
knew?
a really good friend. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that
Um,
was
yeah. So I was living with a really good friend, and then the neighbors. It's like, have you ever lived in an apartment complex or a townhome?
yeah.
It's the same thing. So the neighbors are there. I'm the landlord, but like it's I didn't see them that much. They were fine. They were nice people.
Okay.
Um, so I think it's a spectrum on the house hacking side. It's it can be harder to achieve really good results, like where the rents more than cover the mortgage in a place like
Mhm.
a San Francisco or New York, I
Exactly.
think. And from day one, it can be much easier than Denver in many other cities, though. So it's a spectrum of those. But if you compare it to either renting or buying a home that does not afford you the opportunity to house hacking is generally a much better option financially,
Mhm.
if you're willing to put up with some of that. Because, like, think
Exactly.
about it. I could have bought a home for $240,000 and not had tenants and just paid a 1550 mortgage, right? It's like
Exactly.
clearly even if the mortgage was $2,000, I'm getting $1,500. I'm at least offsetting my mortgage by 1,500 in a way that the homeowner who's buying this an equivalent property is not, right?
Okay.
So think about, there's no way that I would have been able to generate my current financial position if I had bought a house or a condo for $240,000 and lived in it as a resident rather than
Mhm.
house hacking. I would be I would be hundreds of thousands of dollars worse off by doing
Exactly.
that. It's an unfair advantage in your wealth building journey if you're willing to do it, and why a middle class person who buys a house versus a middle class person who house hacks, the wealth profile will be millions of dollars different over the course of a lifetime because they will never. It'll take a decade for that one person to get started meaningfully
Yeah.
investing, while the house hacker is investing right then, building equity and not paying rent and throwing that all into the next investment.
That's
So
cool. Yeah, I wanted to mention that because I think, like everything in life, it's a nuanced decision. It's kind of like, okay, I'm willing to get this house tech, but I understand I'm going to be living with people. I may or may not know them that well, and I just have to do that. But there's a reason for it, right? And I
mhm.
think a lot of us, when we think about our first house, our first property, it's kind of like, I'm gonna have my own place. It's gonna be dope. I'm gonna have it decked out. But you saw it as an investment, as an actual like, I want to do this so I can actually not pay as much. So I think I just want people to understand that and understand the value of the house hack, but also the decisions that come with it. So I think you broke that down pretty well.
Absolutely. And just on that point, I think there's a holistic set of decisions though that are being made in that, right? Because I totally get it. And now I live in my own place, a place I rent.
Yeah.
I don't own, I rent it.
Oh,
After 7 or 8 years of house hacking, my house hacking portfolio can help me pay for my rent. And so I can actually live the nice lifestyle that we all want with as a result of that. But now I'm doing it with passive income. Right. And
right.
so the difference I think is we all want that. That's the end goal for everybody. Even Craig Kurlop, who is a buddy of mine, who I think I saw join this live stream a while ago, right? Wants that, and but the idea is you live frugally and get ahead for 5, 6, 7 years, and then the rest of your life you're always in the position of dominance as it relates to your profession, your career, your employer, those types of things. In the sense that you can fund your housing expense with your passive income or your portfolio. And so that for me, that was the choice, right? So it was like, if I, it's not it's a sacrifice one way or the other. Am I willing to
Yeah.
sacrifice all these years of lack of control, or am I willing to sacrifice my lifestyle conditions for a few short years up front?
Hmm.
So,
Okay. Cool. I like that. I think being able to delay gratification is always it's
mhm.
a hard thing to do, but I think you're a living example of just the benefits of that. And kind of going back to this set myself up, set for life is the name of your book. You were kind of getting into the different, I guess, maybe pillars that you recommend. I think you're on the second or third one. Want to continue there?
Oh, yeah. So, well, I guess 3 steps, right? 3 stages of wealth creation. So the first being a year of financial runway. The second being maybe that $100,000 in net worth mark. The way you get to the first one is through frugality, savings, grinding away, and just accumulating the money, right? The second one is I think you layer in income production and use your savings and your low cost lifestyle to take a job with upside or start a business or house hack or whatever it is that can help you accelerate that journey. You can also just grind your way to $100,000 in savings, like a lot of people do. Um, then the last step there is financial freedom, getting from $100,000 to whatever wealth level you desire, right? And that's where you continue grinding it out. You continue to spend little, you continue to increase your income and the gap between your income and expenses, right? And you begin deploying the capital that you're accumulating in a consistent investment approach. In my opinion for that is I invest with a indefinite or forever time horizon, right? So
Hmm.
I'm looking. I just dump all my money into index funds except for that which I reserve for real estate investments. So I have a dual approach to buying long-term index funds that I'm going to hold for the rest of my life, and then real estate investments that I'm going to buy periodically about once every year. It's actually been about a year and a half since I've transacted in real estate. Actually, that's not true. I invested in a syndication so last year
Oh,
instead
okay.
of my a direct
Another property.
ownership here in
I see.
Denver. Um, but I deployed money into real estate and index funds basically on a consistent basis. Why those two? Because I believe the stock market index funds are going to give me the best risk adjusted, totally passive, long term returns that I can get. And that's my baseline in the stock market, in publicly traded securities. And then I believe I can actually outperform that in real estate with more work as a diversified part of that holistic portfolio. So there's a lot of ways to achieve financial freedom by deploying your excess cash flow. That's one of them. That's my approach.
I see. That makes sense. And I have another question I want to ask real quick, but I also saw some questions coming in.
Mhm.
Just as a reminder, guys, you guys can just submit some questions via that little question box, and I'll try to bring it in when it fits. But one question I had for you was this idea of financial freedom, and I think with the word financial, you obviously think of money, and it's kind of like, would you say that your goal is to be wealthy, or is that more of like, I want to make sure that I'm okay financially so I can do this? Like, how do you get put yourself in a position where you're like, oh, I got to get this property, I got to get that property, like, because at some point you're gonna get burnt out, because how can you scale to that much of that many houses, right? But where do you feel like your goal is and your why of why you're even doing this whole save my money stuff?
I'll tell you what, I'm struggling with this right now, right? Because the goal for me was financial freedom. It was, how do I get to a point where my passively generated income is in excess of my lifestyle expenses so that I am in complete command of my financial position, or technically able to retire for the rest of my life and never have to work again, right? And I achieved that. And so, like, what am I doing now? I'm the CEO of Bigger Pockets. I'm earning more
Hey,
money than I've ever
let them
made.
know.
Yeah. And I'm just piling it up, and I'm piling it up into index funds, and I'm piling it up into real estate. I have a big investment in Bigger Pockets now, that as a business that I invest in. And so, like, what's the point? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just love what I do now, and I'm in total command. And it's like, why not continue fortifying my position so that I can have more control over my life, live my best life, and go from there. But it's not really like an aggressive accumulation of wealth anymore.
Mhm,
We dangle this carrot in front of everybody, like, hey, financial freedom is about retiring early and playing video games or drinking margaritas on the beach or whatever. That's not what it is. What people do when they achieve financial freedom is they work harder than ever, but they do it because, not
they
because they
want
need the
to.
money anymore, but because they like it and they want to do it.
Mhm,
And it's not about the money. It's about these people then go on to change the world in unique and creative ways once they get there, right?
yeah,
And that's what makes me excited about what I do at Bigger Pockets. It also happens to make even more money, and which I'm now just plowing into more investments, right? Why
yeah,
not? That's what I know how to do. So I assume that will, if things continue, result in me building a very large personal net worth over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
mhm,
And that's great. I don't know if I'll ever spend it. Maybe I'll give it away. Maybe I'll figure it out. Right now,
yeah,
I'm focused on Bigger Pockets, and I just apply the excess funds to my personal portfolio. So how's that for an answer to it? It's about getting
no,
that PowerPoint, and then once you get past it, it's a new ball game. You're not struggling to get by.
exactly.
It's the
I love it
power of
though.
your life. Yeah.
No, I love it because I think that's something that I had to really understand kind of when I started that full-time job. I think I don't know what it is, but growing up, maybe whatever you consume in terms of culture or content, it just seems like making money is the thing, right? And then when you
Mhm.
start making it, or when you're trying to make it and you get to what you thought was your goal, you realize you still have a whole life to live. You know what I'm saying? So I think I just always want people to keep asking yourself, what is your why? Do you feel like you're doing it? And then constantly reevaluate. And for the people that aren't watching, this is also a podcast now. Find me on all podcasting platforms, Paul and Pals. Stacy Wu recommended a great book to read for finding out your why called Start with Why. So I just wanted to put that in there.
By Simon Sinek, right?
Yeah. And then we bring the question up from the boy Harneet. I don't think I can read it all, but he said, with residential real estate at an all-time high in terms of value and number of new homeowners and the uncertain economy, let me see, what's your advice on people looking to, I assume, get into real estate or purchase real estate?
Great question. So look, if my approach to real estate investing is this: I buy duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes and other residential real estate here in Denver, Colorado. And I believe that if I hold that property for 30 years, it's going to be worth much more than it is today. Over the course of that 30 years, I'm going to be holding buying and holding property pretty consistently. I know I'm going to be in for a wild ride and a devastating downturn where prices fall and rents fall at some point during that hold. I'll probably be investing for more than 30 years, 50, 60, 70 years, right?
Mhm,
So at some point, I may go through a big recession, a depression. I have no idea. But my strategy calls for buying consistently. And I firmly believe that even if I buy at the top of the market today and it crashes tomorrow, that in 30 years I'll be better off and I won't really know the difference about it. As long as I'm capitalized conservatively, putting aside plenty of cash in my reserve profile, cash flowing the property so that it generates more income than expenses, and including accruals for vacancy and capital expenses and those types of things,
mhm,
right? And so the answer is, for me, it doesn't. The current economic uncertainty does not change my approach at all. I'm still holding my properties, and while I'm not buying right now, I'm refinancing, which is the same effect. I'm going to pull a bunch of cash out, which is me levering more up in real estate, and I'll probably deploy that again in a few months into another real estate investment. So I'm continuing my approach, which is consistent but not aggressive, investing in Denver, Colorado, and I believe it's a long term winner. Even though and I've 100% baked in emotionally and into my planning that I'm going to experience that recessionary environment and drop in
Yeah.
prices and drop in values. Now, as to the is it going to happen next week? I have no idea. Right. One, COVID and the economy could collapse. Right. And we have only ridden the first wave, and we're about to see a huge reduction in prices. Or or the government's going to continue injecting money into the economy, in which case a large amount of inflation is going to occur, which is the best friend of a real estate investor. So it could be a really really good time to buy real estate where it's about to inflate. It could be a really really bad time to invest in real estate where prices are about to plummet, or it could be a moderate time. So how's that for a complete cop out answer? But the
Yeah.
answer is if your strategy depends on property values going up tomorrow after you buy it, you got a bad strategy, and you need to change that and create a winning approach that works in every market.
Gotcha. And I think one good point that I got from that is your plan, right? So I think one thing that you have a good example of, you can't be reactionary to the market unless that's your thing. If you're like trading options and you're trading and selling,
Mhm.
that makes sense that you're tuned in. But it seems like if you want to approach real estate, if you want to do this long term savings, you have to be in it for the long haul. You have to be in it knowing I might lose money. You know what I'm saying? So I think I want people to also understand that whole aspect of it. It's not a I'm gonna be rich tomorrow, next week, or next year. It's a I see it long term, right?
I think that's absolutely right. I think for my approach, if I react to market conditions, I'm going to get hosed. Some people may actually want to invest and change their approach according to market cycles and do all those kinds of things.
hmm
So
Okay, cool. And another thing was I want to also touch on bigger pockets money a little bit because we're getting a little bit more into just financial advice as a whole. And before we get into that, you keep mentioning 30 years, you keep mentioning long term, you keep mentioning investing for later. Now, what do you see? Like, how do you even see that working out? So let's say you have all this money in your portfolio and you're investing it for 20, 30 years, it grows, it's millions of dollars, right? Do you like what would you think is next for you? Like, do you start taking it out, or like how would you approach that?
well, so this is an interesting paradox, right? So that we've got here. So if I set a firm date and optimize for that, right? So suppose I buy a lot of cash flowing properties, pay them off in cash, and I'm looking for that 10,000 a month in cash flow. That's my retirement number, right? Well, and I buy them in a market, let's call it like Indianapolis, right? Indianapolis is not an appreciating market. Most people would say it's a cash flowing market for real estate investing, right? Or I invest in a Denver, right? um, which one is going to get me more cash flow in 10 years, right? Well, paradoxically, I believe that the investment in Denver in an appreciating market where I've got X amount of cash flow right now is actually going to produce more cash flow in 10 years, but it's a bet on appreciation. So if I don't need the money, if I'm not going to spend it, if I'm not going to retire next week, I'll actually get there paradoxically faster, I think, by investing in the growth and with a very, very long term outlook and knowing that I could get hosed. If I make all of my decisions with the optimal long term mathematical bet in mind. And
Yeah,
that happens to more often than not
exactly.
result in advanced progress towards my goal of financial freedom in the short run, right?
hmm
I plan on it taking 30 years, but in reality, it takes 7 or 8 because the market has boomed this last 7 or 10 years, right? That could change next time, but how can you predict the market with those types of things? I don't know. So
hmm
I'm not. I don't know if I'm answering your BP money question, but that's where I'm kind of thinking about my
Yeah.
long term approach and how that also ties in with the concept of financial freedom as soon
hmm
as possible.
Yeah. No, I brought up BP
That's
money because I wanted to kind of get into that because I think it's more than real estate. When you're thinking about financial advice, it's a whole like spectrum. And I think like the reason I asked you about the long term is that if you have all these properties and they're cash flowing, technically you would argue, well, why would you have to put money out if they're bringing in enough money for you to just live as you've been living? So I wanted to understand
oh,
your
it's be,
reasoning for that.
it's because it's inefficient. So it's a concept called return on equity. If I own $100,000 property all in cash and it appreciates 3%, I get a 3% return.
hmm
If I own a $100,000 property with $20,000 down and $80,000 in leverage with my loan, and the property appreciates 3%, I've now earned I've earned a 3% $3,000 return on $20,000, which is a 15% return, right? So just because and I'm in a situation, so I mean, look, personally, if I was retired and not generating income from any other source, I might have a different approach. I might take my portfolio, which is right now optimized for the long term, and
Hmm.
change that so that it produced more stable and less volatile income that I could draw down on. But I'm working right now. So I've optimized my portfolio for the long term. I will continue to optimize it for the long term because that's efficient. Why wouldn't I? I don't need the money and it will be a bigger pile downstream. It's not that much more work. I'm still well capitalized. I can
Yep.
invest in other things right now. And I've got an income from my job to more than cover my lifestyle expenses and allow me to continue investing on top of that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I was trying to understand that, and I do want to touch on bigger pockets money. I know we're kind of nearing our hour here, but I want to kind of have you explain what bigger pockets money is, and then why you guys started that as a supplement to bigger pockets as a whole.
Yeah. So, a lot of when we started Bigger Pockets Money, Mindy and I were a little concerned because there was a lot of investors out there who were looking, I think, to get started in real estate without savings and without good credit and without stable income. And
Uh,
real estate investing is a lot easier and a lot more practical to access, and in my opinion, a lot less risky when you can put a down payment down, have good credit, and have stable income that a lender can lend against. And so, while it is possible to invest in real estate with no and low money down, and we have success stories, Mindy and I feel like the better approach is to help people get into a position where they can generate a really good financial fortress from which to begin investing in assets like real estate investing. Many of our Bigger Pockets Money listeners don't invest in real estate, and that's totally fine. But they all should be building, I think, or if you're listening to the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, you're probably going to, over time, develop a position that is at least capable of investing in real estate or long-term stock investments or other assets that you're interested in accumulating because you're going to spend less than you earn and build up your financial position.
yeah, cool. Yeah, I wanted to address that because I think when I think of real estate, and you were kind of saying it earlier, it's a very middle class, or at least you need to have some type of money to get involved, right? So if you don't understand money, if you don't know how to utilize it, you can't just jump to that, right? So I think the fact that you guys are focusing on just financial literacy as a whole, which is something that I think should be a part of, just curriculum as a whole, which is it's not right now, but I think that's a very great place to start. So I just wanted to plug Bigger Pockets Money podcast. If you guys are looking for any financial resource, I think it definitely serves that purpose.
Yeah, and thank you, by the way, for two of the commenters who seem to like Bigger Pockets Money. I
They
appreciate
really
it.
like it.
I can't pronounce your name El
It's a lot of
Dramia
yeah,
and but
consonants and
Stacy.
vowels.
Yes, thank you, Stacy. I can pronounce your name. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And we're kind of nearing towards the end. And one thing I wanted to do before I kind of ask you, words of advice, is the very kind of source of your change in mentality when it came to financial literacy was this whole, I don't want to work for somebody. I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. And I want to ask you about that. This sense of like people should do this because they hate their job, right? And I want you to address that. Do you think that's really why you should switch it, or is it more you want control? Because I think I know people that like their job, right? But it might not put them in this position of this financial freedom that you speak of. So how do you approach that for somebody that just they don't want to do all this, but they still need to get financially free?
Well, it's a spectrum. I wanted to be financially free so bad that I was willing to do whatever it took to become financially free.
Hmm.
So I look, maybe not everybody is willing to do that, right? But I think everybody should at least consider the concept of building wealth and working toward a financial freedom. If that's over a 20-year period and they want to do it more slowly and more methodically while working a job that they like, that's fine. I think if you hate your job, that's a totally valid reason to pursue financial freedom. And I love that
Yeah.
as a motivator. Look, we don't like if all this does is get people out of jobs they hate and into jobs that they like, or even just out of jobs that they hate and able to not have to work, that's a wonderful outcome. But again, what's more powerful about it, and what should motivate more people, I think, is not only will it get you out of that job you hate, but it will get you into a position of control to dictate the terms of your career. And you can go on and make a massive impact on society in a way that is not dictated by your boss, red tape, or any other organization. you're going to go
Mhm.
figure that out. If you have the hustle and determination and intelligence and grit and discipline to achieve financial freedom at early age, you're going to go on and make some sort of contribution. You're not going to just rest and play video games all day.
Right. Let's make the world a better place, man. And you dropped a lot of gems throughout the interview, a lot of stuff that I think people should definitely watch it back for, listen back for. But what I always like to do to wrap up the episode is I want to ask you, based on your experience, where you are in life right now, maybe what you got planned, what are some words of advice you would like to just share with the audience that you feel has made you who you are today?
Yeah, I would say goal setting, right? So I think a lot of life happens to people because they don't have a clear vision of where they want to go and what they want and how they're going to get there. And so I would say write down, even if you're not sure what exactly that is, what you want, how you're going to get there at a high level, and then set annual, quarterly, weekly, daily goals and move towards them every single day and track towards them. Also, I'm getting requests for a joke.
Yeah, man.
I know
Give us the background on
I
the
know that
joke.
you relish them, but I don't have any pickle jokes today, guys. I'm sorry. So
Oh man, you
yeah.
bad jokes, man. I'm gonna cut
So
this out of the podcast. That was bad.
everyone's gonna be salty about that. Yeah.
No,
All
that was
right.
bad. No, but no, I appreciate that. And just for a background, if you guys don't know, if you listen to the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, Scott just always has uh a joke that you
I
may or may not laugh at, but you might appreciate.
yeah.
Um, but once again, Scott, I do want to thank you for coming on to the Paul and Pals podcast. I appreciate all the knowledge you've definitely given us. And I also want to remind everybody about the raffle prize. So once again, you'll be giving away two prizes. You know, one is going to be the Set for Life book that he kind of broke down the, I guess, the summary of it. And then we'll also be giving away a 1-year membership to Bigger Pockets Pro,
That's
right?
right.
And
Mhm.
to basically get, I'm gonna actually post the questions. So make sure you guys follow Paul and Pals on Instagram. I'm actually gonna post the questions tomorrow night. I'm gonna post 5 questions. You have to answer at least 4 out of 5 correct to be entered. And for the people that are really smart and take notes and answer 5 out of 5 right, I will actually post. You actually get 2 entries, but all the questions are based off of the episode content. So I hope you guys have been paying attention. It might be I gotta make these questions a little bit trickier because you're on Google and stuff, so they might know the basic stuff. So
Mm.
I'm gonna have to listen back and see where you really said like one line that they might not catch. So, but once
Yeah.
again, I do want to thank you for coming on. If you have any last words, anything you want to plug, please feel free.
No, I normally don't like to plug it that much, but you plugged a lot for Bigger Pockets and Set for Life today, so I appreciate it. Yeah, you can find me on Bigger Pockets or here on Instagram. If you want to connect,
Okay.
I'll get a little bit more active on Instagram following this. So
Yeah.
I
Thank you, man.
haven't really done much lately, but I need to. So
Appreciate it. But nah, thank you so much. I'm gonna let you go, and I'm gonna wrap it up with the audience. And let's drop some pony emojis, applause emoji, whatever y'all want to drop for Scott Trench. Thank you, man.
thank you guys.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in to episode 11 of the Paul and Pals podcast. I hope you guys were able to hear something that was of value today, something that you enjoy, something that you like. But some requests on my end. I'm just starting out, and word of mouth is key to really making this thing grow. So if you guys enjoyed anything of this episode, share it. I'm gonna post a 24-hour basically post of this. You guys will be available for 24 hours. Share with anybody that you think would enjoy it, would like it, and then I'll actually be back in about 2 weeks to announce the winners of the raffle and to interview my next guest. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.